Alrighty, what do we got going on today? Oh, it looks like, oh no, I'm gonna have to eat crow instead of Krispy Kreme. Ah, dang it. Seriously. Okay, everybody, apparently, besides eating Krispy Kreme, I need to eat some crow because I'm rethinking the HeyGears UltraCraft resin printer. Now, for those of you who don't know, resin printing is kind of a cool thing where basically, let me see if I can pull up some stuff here, where basically it ends up that you have a resin, a liquid resin that sits in a vat and light shines up and a thing is, well, let me see if I can just find it. It's so much easier if I just do a video because then you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. So anyway, here's what we talked about, resin printing. Basically what happens is you have this here, which is the vat, and it's clear on the bottom. It has like a transparent type of film on there, and down below that shines a light. And basically what happens is you have an item, like say you've got this guy here, and what a slicing program will do will slice this model in kind of like slices of bologna. And what it'll end up doing is the light will shine up, and on that very first layer, it'll harden that liquid resin with UV light. And then it'll back off, and then it'll go back, and then it'll do the second layer, it'll shine the light, it'll harden that second layer to the first layer, and it continues on until it builds up, and boom, you get your guy. Okay, so basically what we end up having, and here's a little video, if it ends up, let's see if we can find it. So basically what happens is, here we go. This is going to start off, and you have your supports, and then you have whatever you're printing. This just happens to be the Mandalorian, and yeah, that's kind of what it does. So it'll go down, it'll shine the light, then it'll go up and down, but basically overall it goes up until layer by layer your model is printed, which is kind of cool. That's how 3D resin printing works. So with that being said, I mean, that's really cool. You can print a lot of stuff. Yeah, and here's the bottom where you can see where the light shines up and, activates that resin. So we have another view of this. And we'll just kind of speed this along. So all that in white is a single layer, which usually at default is about 50 microns. So a human hair can be anywhere around 100 microns, depending on how thick the hair is or how thin it is. Just to give you some reference, those are some pretty small layers that this thing prints in. And so basically, yeah, it goes through and it does all that and boom, it is good to go. So that's basically what we end up seeing with resin printing. Now, the HeyGears, I've talked about this in a previous video, the HeyGears UltraCraft Reflex 3D resin printer, say that 5 times fast, came out from a company, HeyGears, and they were in the medical and dental field of printing things. And in case you didn't know, dental printing of teeth and implants, the caps that go on to the implants and things like that, come from resin printers with dental resin. It's a thing. Matter of fact, I've got 4 implants that I got here in Korea, and guess what? They were all resin printed. So that's the background of the company of HeyGears, and they decided to go, let's enter into the hobbyist and resin printing market. Now it's kind of a big category because you can have people that are doing like prototypes that they print out and do, engineers and things like that. And then you have people that print stuff to sell products. And then you have people like me, the hobbyists, that are in it for the hobby reasons. You print your stuff and you paint them and play with them, whatever, give them away, whatever it is that you do. So anyway, this UltraCraft Reflex is incredible. It is an incredible machine, but it's also basically $1,400. Now, to put that into perspective, my Saturn III Ultra was about, $500 back when I got it. And yeah, so there is a huge price difference. And then, so let's basically just show you what I'm talking about here. So the UltraCraft Reflex is about $1,400. Ouch. That is a huge amount of money for a resin printer. Now, if you're into production and if you're into engineering and doing all that kind of engineering printing stuff, that could be within your budget of your department, whatever it is, and so on and so forth. Even then, for people that do side gigs with resin printing, this is an expensive printer. There is no doubt about it. It does have a lot of bells and whistles, and we'll go over those. But the other thing that I pointed out, besides the extremely high price tag, is the price of the resin. So the price of the resin here is like $89. There's some for like $99 that is on their website. There's one. But the thing is, the great thing about this printer is that when you use their proprietary resin, there's no dialing in the printer. There's no setting and adjusting the burn-in layers, the transition layers, the wait time after lift, the lift wait and wait after lift and before lift, and the speed in which it's going to retract and go back down, and none of that is there. So basically, you have a machine that albeit it's an expensive bottle of resin for 1 liter compared to the resin that I use, which is like, $20, $25 within that price range, maybe $27, $30. Yeah, they're charging $89 and $99. So at the time that I saw this and saw some reviews, it is an incredible machine. It is indeed, but it's $1,400. And then the resin, you can't use third-party resins with it, at least at the time that I made my video back when. So with that, it was like, yeah, awesome technology. They've been in the market for a long time, so it's not like a new company just coming into the resin printing world and putting out a machine, doing a Kickstarter thing. No, they have been doing medical resin printing for quite some time. So that is some incredible amount of detail and reliability that you have to do resin printing in a dental or medical field. You have to be reliable. It can't just be like, close enough, No, these are exacting standards when you have teeth printed out and put into somebody's mouth, because then they did a 3D scan of my lowers and my uppers and the whole 9 yards, and then they made the teeth and they were resin printed, and then of course they did some small adjustments and everything, but to exacting standards. So HeyGears is great when it comes to precision, but then there's the cost. It's an expensive printer and the resin is expensive. However, with that being said, over time, people have found out that you can use other resins with their printer, and even though it voids the warranty and they don't recommend it, they don't support any third-party resins, people ended up saying, hey, well, this is their resin, this is, Sunlu or Jamhe or whatever it is, different types of resins. And they said, well, heck, let's just give it a shot. And what they've done is found out that there are some third-party resins that you can just pour in there in the bottle that they have. Boom, put that in. You don't have to set anything. You don't have to do your burn times, your layer, your transitions. You don't have to dial in your printer, and you don't have to print these little things to see, okay, well, I'm going to take these and I got to see which one's better. Oh, well, is it the 2.2 or is it the 2.4, 0.32 or whatever it is? No. You just set it, forget it, print, slice and print, and boom. This is changing the game, because now it is getting very tempting, because now we have a printer with exacting slicing program that does auto supports better than anything else I have ever seen. So to get new people into the market, and it lessens that learning curve to basically, it's flat. So essentially auto leveling, heated chamber, heated resin, it has a resin pump and reservoir to autofill, which is incredible, because if you're doing big prints and you need more than the resin that is in the vat, it will fill it automatically. It has a purge system, apparently, I don't know. But yeah, incredible results. And so now it's like, $1,400. Yes, that's highly expensive. But then HeyGears did something that surprised me. And even in my old video talking about HeyGears, as I said that, and others as well, said that, hey, your proprietary resin is great, and I understand that. You lock down all the settings because you've got it dialed in perfectly, way better than any of us could do. Maybe there's one or two people on YouTube that could dial in a resin to the exacting standards of what HeyGears does with their proprietary resin. But now that they're using third-party resins, and I said if the cost of the resin was way too much, and if they brought that cost down, then they would bring themselves into the market of the hobbyists again. Albeit it's a huge, that's a lot to swallow. $1,400 is a lot to swallow for a lot of hobbyists. So when we look at, say, for example, $1,400 for their machine, and then their resin is $89, and then their other resin is like $99 for a liter. And again, putting it into perspective, people are usually like myself and paying about $25 a bottle per liter. Apparently, HeyGears took the time and said, hey, we need to. So what did they do? Bam! Ultra Print Modeling PARP 10 Rapid Prototyping Resin, $45 a bottle. Still a little bit more than $30, but they cut it in half. And so again, you could put this resin into the printer, no dialing in, no nothing, no tracking, no doing multiple prints to set your exposure levels and try to pick out which one is best, and crossing your fingers and hoping that the supports will hold. They've even done one better. It is absolutely insane. Let's go over this again for those of you who don't know. And yeah, it's smart AI peeling force management, 33 precision, which is 33 micron precision, which most printers have a default of 50 microns, but you can go down to like 20 and so on and so forth. But again, now you have to do some more leveling. Now you have to dial in your resin for that particular resin that you're using on this non-HeyGears machine. It has auto resin level detection. Yeah, you don't have to worry about hanging out at home because you're doing a large print and you have to pour resin into the vat. Otherwise, it's going to screw up your print. It's a thing. It is obviously a thing. Auto heated tray. In other words, they have a vat, and that vat heats up the resin, and that is a hugely important thing for resin printing. And I've got a heater in my Saturn III Ultra, and it helped me with my prints, but there's still the dialing in and the leveling and all that. 90% consistency, 90.6 detail restoration rate. All of this stuff is absolutely crazy. When we look at this, the automated features, the resin itself that they have, that, let's say if you buy their resin at $45 a bottle because I'm cheap, it does better, experience 1.5 times more powerful resin curing effect than that of other 3D printers. That's going to come into play when we talk about printing your models and the supports and how easy or hard it is to get the models off the supports. Talks about eliminate layer gaps with a Z-axis repositioning accuracy of plus or minus 2 microns. The human hair is like 100 microns. This does it all. Again, this all stems from HeyGears being in the medical resin field. It has to be precise. So yeah, this is absolutely crazy. Screen force sensor. So in other words, if there is something in the vat and the bed goes down, and it will detect that something is in the vat and it can't go down to the screen, it will stop. In other words, you're not going to poke a hole through your FEP like I did with my Saturn III Ultra because you had little bits and pieces floating around in the vat. The other thing, automatic build plate leveling with a floating screen structure. Reflex can automatically level build plate inclinations up to 0.15 degrees and eliminate gaps of the platform and tray of up to 150 microns. That is huge. So in other words, they said it, they forget it, you print and go. That's basically what happens. Automatic resin refill. This is kind of awesome because, again, accuracy within plus or 5 grams. That's incredible. And automatic refill before and during printing. Isn't that something? Now, if you notice on here, on this little thing here, you've got this little thing, this little dam that opens up that allows the resin. You can actually set this so it's in the down position. So if you wanted to use a different resin and not use the reservoir auto-filling capability of this printer, you could do that. That is pretty amazing. The other thing we end up having is automatic resin heating, which is very different than what most people do. Like for myself in the Saturn III Ultra, I have a little air heater that is within the enclosure of my Saturn III Ultra. It heats the air. I got to heat up the resin. I got to run it under really hot water to heat up the bottle, and then I shake it up, and then, okay, is it warm to the touch? Yeah. Then I pour it in the vat. I turn my heater on, and that has given me better results. But it's not as consistent as having a heated chamber in and of itself, or the vat that is heated up through the bottom that keeps all of the resin heated at a temperature that it needs to be to get successful prints. Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. Precise Technology, it's going to talk about this, about, with their precision and stuff like that. It's just absolutely insane. Zero tolerance assembly results. That's with their UltraPrint Part 10 rapid prototyping. They're expensive resin. But you can take a look at that, and the way that comes together is so exact and so precise. That's going to pass on if you use their lower quality resin, or I shouldn't say lower quality, I should say less expensive resin, and even probably, most likely, with third-party resins. Some people have done it. Detail restoration, in other words, comparing the printed model with the digital design, and it's insanely surface tolerance of plus or less than 0.05 millimeters, which is crazy. This is another thing, intelligent regional exposure by identifying various key regions of each layer, such as support structures as well as inner and outer shells, and curing them separately. Reflex significantly improves the surface hardness and the support strength of prints, especially those printed like high tensile modulus materials. I don't know, sounds like a Mad Max modulus materialist. Such as ABS-like resin, PVC-like, nylon-like resin, elastic resin, so on and so forth. So basically what you end up here is kind of like with a regular printer, the light shines up through the bottom, cures that layer, and everybody gets the same amount of light. Versus what they have is they have more UV exposure on their supports, and yet the model itself is a little bit less, and then the inside is still cured. But what that does is create stronger supports, but a little bit more brittle supports, so when they come off of the model isn't as super hard as the supports, so it's easier to take the supports off, and you don't have as many marks as you would like on a regular resin printer. Now again, this is cool in the fact that you can dial in with your slicing program. Like on my Saturn III Ultra, I use Lychee Slicer Pro. I also use Cheetah Box for a little bit. But using that slicing program, I can make my supports. I can do the diameter of the post as it goes up. I can do the length of the tip and the contact point. I can set that. But imagine trying to do that to get the perfect print so that it removes with minimal amount of damage or scuff marks on your print. That's going to take a long time to dial in and figure out exactly what supports you need to use where, because most of us do manual supporting. Now, there have been advancements in support technology, especially with Lychee Slicer Pro and some other ones, where their auto supports are getting much better, but still, it's not to the level of where HeyGears is at, and that is what's amazing. So again, you see the price, $1,400. We've got a lot of stuff that's built into this machine, but it's $1,400. Z-axis, it talks about stuff like that. AI-assisted peeling force management. So in other words, it automatically applies the optimal peeling parameters to each printed layer to improve printing efficiency and results by detecting characteristics of that individual sliced layer and calculating the results of using different peeling forces. That is insane. That is next level technology, because when my printer lifts up, it just lifts up. And it's going to lift up at a certain speed, and it'll lift up a little bit, then a little bit more, until the FEP goes off of the print, and then it's going to go back down, and then go back down, and then do the whole thing again. It's a one-size-fits-all type of thing. And you have to dial that stuff in at times if you want to get as close to perfection as possible. HeyGears has done all that for you. And the reason that they're able to do this is not because it's new technology. Well, it's new technology to us, but they've been using it in the medical and dental field for quite some time. So they're just bringing it to us and saying, hey, you want some crack? Check this out. This stuff is awesome. So it has that. Scalable production, printing consistency across build plates. The light uniformity is about 90%, and that's what we end up seeing in this graphic here on my Saturn III Ultra, which is a great machine. And it's definitely not as expensive as this thing. But on the edges of where my build plate are, I know that I can have some failures. So on the build plate, you have little squares on there to show, on your slicing thing. I know that there are some outlying areas on my build plate that I cannot put some certain things on there because the supports, I don't know if it's the light transmission or whatever it is, but I just won't get as good a supports as if I have the supports and my items like more inside of like a one square boundary, kind of like a square like that. So there's that. That's another advancement. Printing consistency during the printer lifetime by testing and recording light source aging data. So in other words, basically what he's talking about is you have a light source, kind of like this here, bing, and it's going to shine a light. And when you first buy this light, it's going to be really, really bright. That's what it's going to look like. And then you're going to do a bunch of prints, and then it's going to go down. And then you're going to do a bunch more prints, and it's going to go down, and it's going to go down, and it's going to go down, and then eventually your screen is going to die. The life of your screen or the light source, as it goes down over time through use, there is no auto adjustment to maximize or take up the loss of that light, because you were printing at 100% light, and now maybe it's gone down to 97, maybe it's gone down to 95, or whatever it is, it's gone down over time. Most printers, matter of fact, I don't think there's any other printer except for the HeyGears that actually adjust for that so that it can keep your printer printing and maximizing the light source. That is insane. That is insane. So in other words, keeping the intensity to where it needs to be, that's just amazing. But again, this all stems from the medical field. Advanced materials, Reflex provides 1.5 times stronger curing effect than most other resin printers, and that's because of the 385, whatever the hell that is, UV light, enabling a selection of more advanced materials and improved performance for finished prints. Compared to resin 3D printers using 405 nm UV curing. If you know what that nm means, put that in the comment section down below, because I have no clue. But with that being said, yeah, they are offering a lot more options. And again, all of this stems from their work in the medical field. 88% light transference, tear strength, which is kind of amazing. Here it is, the flexual strength, high strength, and high toughness resin. Of course, they have different types of resins. So it's bringing a lot to the table. For that $1,400, they need to bring a lot to the table. They really do. So here's what you get. you get the printer, you get the build platform, which is pretty nice, the resin tank, which is kind of an odd, weird shape, power cord, temperature, and liquid level sensor. Yeah, it's a thing. And then, of course, your little kits and so on and so forth. Here's the thing. The build volume is 192 by 121 by 220 millimeters, which is a good size printer. Build height is 220 millimeters. Native pixel height is 33 accuracy is plus or minus 16 microns. Printer speed is 27 millimeters an hour based on layer thickness of 50 microns, then dimensions, and USB, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, you could plug it in or not, or use your USB. The weight, the voltage, rated power, 350 watts, and some other stuff there. Again, they're bringing a lot to the table for your $1,400, and that is a lot to choose. Yeah, but if you want something that is set it and forget it so that you don't have to deal with all of the stuff that you deal with. Matter of fact, let me just show you. It's easier to show you. I have been using Jamhe water washable resin because I don't like using the isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to be switching over to some other resins and testing some stuff, so that will change in the near future, but it's a little bit less cleanup for me. But with that, if we go and we take a look at Lychee Slicer Pro and we go to resin, here is my Jamhe 10K water washable resin gray, 50 microns, and we can see a bunch of settings here. So in your burn-in layers, you have 4 burn-in layers. Now when you dial in, you can get some Barney basic settings, but you might need to tweak them. So your number of layers for your burn-in might be 4, might be 5, might be 6. I don't know. What's the exposure time? Depending on the resin, like for water washable resin, it works best for me, it's 17. Other people, it's more or less. If you have regular resin, like ABS-like resin, then those times will go up even more. But you still have to dial in and do some testing to get the numbers to get as close to perfection or acceptable perfection as you want. Transition layer count, 6, that can change. Lift distance, if you're really going to dial in, there's a huge learning curve to understand what transition layer count is, lift distance, retract distance, lift speed, retract speed, weight before print, weight after lift, light intensity, the whole 9 yards. And that's just the burn-in layers. So now we're talking about the normal layers, the layer thickness, and usually most people use the 50 microns. But the exposure time, to find that out, you have to do multiple test prints like I showed here and here and here and here. So, and these aren't even all of them. There's probably about 10 or 15 more in the hobby room there of dialing in the resin that I use. And then if I change the FEP or if I change something or whatever, I got to go back. I got to re-level it, which is honestly is a pain in the butt this last time. And then I got to go through this testing procedure again and print all these things out again. Exposure times. I did printing exposure times of like 1.8 up to 2.5, and then, a half second in between to try to find out which one is the best, what is the tensile strength of this, and the whole 9 yards. And then you still have lift distance, retract, lift speed, retract speed, weight before print, after print, weight after print, and all of that to dial in your resin. That's a lot of information. So, yeah, it's just absolutely crazy on what you have to do to dial in your resin and to level your printer and to print off those test pieces. But with the HeyGears machine, you get it, you set it up. I would assume that you would probably want it on a level table. I leveled my table that my printer is on, and then I had to level the bed of the printer itself. I'm hoping that helped. I'm not sure. But with the HeyGears, you don't have to be scratching your head and saying, is this level or not? Or is what speed? What is the burn-in? I'm new to this. I don't know anything about burn-in and transition. And why are my prints failing? And why are my prints failing? The biggest thing that we see with new people getting into resin printers, and myself included, was why isn't it working? I put the recommended settings, but it's not working. It's not printing the models that I want to print. Frustrating days, testing, more prints, using more resin. Yeah, this is $1,400, but it gets delivered. You put in the resin, you slice your print, which the slicer on this thing is probably the most incredible slicing, automatic slicing that has been around yet so far, and people print stuff like that. They don't have, you can't even get into the settings for burn-in and exposure times because that's how they made their printer. They want to sell their resin, which is understandable, and they want to make money off it. I thought they got a little bit greedy with the $89 and $90 resins. I still hold to that. But then they listened to the market, us people, and what they ended up doing is dropping, and they have a more affordable resin at $45 a liter. Now, the cool thing is that whatever resin you get, you don't have to dial it in. You don't have to waste time. You don't have to waste resin in dialing in and leveling your printer and all that stuff. That can be frustrating. It's $1,400. But from the get-go, you can print stuff. Now, that's a lot of money. I'm of the school of buy once, cry once. But at the time that I bought my Saturn III Ultra, this wasn't a thing, okay? And to kind of put it into perspective, here is the Saturn III Ultra. It was $463, and it was higher when I bought it. But I've had it probably almost a year now, shortly after it came out, and saw some good reviews. But now it's $370. And the build area is 218 by 122 by 260, so it's got a pretty decent build area. So to put this into perspective, there's the build area for the Saturn III Ultra. I'll just put, it's 0.88 and 0.88. We'll just keep it simple for my sake. 218 by 122 by 260. Theirs is 192 by 121 by 220. So you're losing a little bit of real estate. But you don't have to dial it in. You don't have to level it. You don't have to print out test pieces and all that stuff. But what about the Elegoo 4, the Saturn 4? Now we're looking at that price there, which is crazy. $524, now it says it's $399. That can't be the right. Seriously? That is the right price? That can't be. Resin printing, Mars 5, Saturn 3 Ultra, Saturn 4 Ultra. I guess that's it. It was $524, and now it's $399. Yeah, a little bit bigger build area, but it doesn't have a lot of the features. Now it does have a camera and, a bunch of other things on here. Let's take a look at it. The bat tilts to help peel off, but that just applies to everything. It's not auto leveling and auto theft removing thing like we saw on the HeyGears, on the UltraCraft. Different lens, AI monitoring, mechanical sensor, auto leveling, which is good. A little bit bigger of a build area. Tilt release technology so that you can get faster printing, which is a good thing because you don't want to waste time. I would be interested to see if you printed a model with the HeyGears UltraCraft Reflex and then print that exact same model on the Saturn IV Ultra and see what the times are. But then, do you include the times that you had to level or had to dial in your resin? You could kind of what if this thing to death. 12K, the lens, self-check, automatic leveling, print right out of the box. There are some people that have experienced problems with the leveling with the bed and that automatic leveling thing. It's some things that yeah, they're going to have to fix. It's, and they do. Elegoo has done some good jobs as far as being up to date. AI camera, intelligent detection, minimize potential loss, smart mechanical sensor for worry-free printing, as well as a resin shortage and leveling failure alarm to enhance the safety and reliability of the printing, which is really good because of the. I don't know. Does the HeyGears have the power loss thing detection and then goes back? I don't know. Time-lapse photography, even though they say don't use a light, but what the hey, it doesn't really matter. I've done some I've done some time-lapse photography with my Saturn III Ultra and put a LED ring light in there, and yeah, it hasn't affected anything. So, but yeah, they've done some great stuff with this printer, and it's definitely a hell of a lot less expensive. And you can go down to 20 microns. 50 microns is normal. Layer thickness is 1 micron to 2 microns, 1 to 0.2 or 1 to 2 or whatever that is. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. But the price for this is $400 apparently. Seriously. I got to order before August 31st. So that's on the pre-ordering. And then it'll probably go up. So it'll be like $500. So this is an awesome deal if you're looking to, get into resin printing. But when you're looking at this, and if you're an engineer or you're doing a side gig or a business, or maybe you're just a Uber hobbyist and you're super tabletop gaming Warhammer type of person, and you just want to set it and forget it and go. You don't want that long learning curve to learn a bunch of new skills that comes with, the Elegoo and having to dial in resin and this and that and getting frustrated. Been there, done that. Is that $1,400 worth it to you? And it all comes down to budget, and it depends, you could buy how many Elegoos could you buy for the Saturn IV? Let's just say 524, and this is 1,400. So let's say it's nope. So basically, we'll say 1,400. I can't even press buttons right. Seriously, 1,400 divided by, we'll say 524. Just to keep it retail, you can buy 2.67 of those. So you could basically buy 2, round it up a little bit, you could buy 3 Elegoo Saturn IVs for the price of one of these. Is that worth it? I don't know, because now if you do that, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to have to dial in the resin for each one. And there are people that have ended up who said that I've run into internet and interwebs and social media of people that have said, hey, I've had problems. I have the same resin printer. I have 3 of them, and I've had to dial in the resin separately for each different machine, and they're high exacting standards, obviously. But there's people that don't have high exacting standards that had multiple of the same printers and still had different variables or fluctuations in the settings for burn-in, exposure times, lift speeds, and all of that from one machine to another, even though it was the exact same machine. So is it worth it? I don't know. It could be. Let me brighten this up a little bit. You can see my ugly mug. So yeah, that could be something. But since HeyGears ended up saying that, hey, they got the message, $99 resin is a bit too much. That's a hard dog to bite on every single month if you're buying resin. But $45, I can almost kind of justify that. I'm retired and I have my hobby, and my wife lets me do it, so I'm happy. But again, with this and people like with Greedy 3D and him and other people ended up, Phil Hammer, he talks about this printer being, the printer of the future, and that's the one that he uses personally. But Grady 3D here is he has used, and others have used, Sunlu standard resin, Jamhe standard plus resin, Jamhe water washable resin, and then I think that's which one is that? Dun, dun, dun. I don't know. Standard polymer. Let's see if we can hear what he says.
So no worries about the bottles, no worries
Elegoo.
about it topping itself up. Just take your standard Elegoo resin
and he ends up talking about using the standard Elegoo resin with all of these resins and how it works with the I didn't even show you the screen. That's what. Why am I such a bad host? Bad host. So yeah, let's get back here. So anyway, stop it. Okay, Elegoo standard resin gray, Sunlu Jamhe standard plus resin, and then the Jamhe water washable resin. He has used these resins in the UltraCraft Reflex machine from HeyGears, and it works. So in other words, there's no dialing in, there's no doing, there might be some very minimal differences, but he can't notice any differences. And there's other people that have found out that they can use third-party resins with this machine and just take their big bottle, empty it out, clean it, and pour in your other resin, and boom, you're good to go. Recycle the bottles, and that's a thing. So yeah. Now we're talking about like the Jamhe water washable resin, which is what I used on this guy here. So I did this dude, and then I also used it for this guy here, and he had some problems because I needed to adjust my resin. In other words, I had to dial it in a little bit more, so I had some problems printing that out, but I wouldn't have had those problems had I had the HeyGear UltraCraft Reflex printer. So yeah, now that we're seeing that like the Jamhe water washable resin, you're looking at what, $25, $27? I'm not sure. It depends on where you live. I live in South Korea. But Sunlu standard resin, Jamhe standard plus Elegoo resin. I'm sure there's going to be more where these third-party resins are going to work with this machine. So yeah, now that 1400 is like, interesting indeed. It, if it had a larger build area, but with me being the person in the way that I am, I had to eat some crow, and I had to let you all know that, hey, I'm rethinking this, and instead of writing them off and seeing what HeyGears did with making a cheaper resin, and then now that people have found that there's third-party resins that can work with this machine, it is something doable. So if it's something like that, I don't know, it brings it into the level of possibility. But again, it all depends on your budget. If your budget is $500, then yeah, go for the Elegoo Saturn IV Ultra, or go with the the Uniformation GK2. That is an awesome machine as well. As a matter of fact, Fohammer ended up doing he did that review of this machine, but he's done some review of the Uniformation GK3, which is coming out, and that's going to be obviously a little bit more expensive. But if price isn't a thing and you value the auto leveling, if you value the automatic VAT leveling features, if you value all of that stuff that we looked at, like optimizing the UV light that comes from the lens so that you have consistent UV light through the life of the screen and the light source that you have in the printer, that could be worth $1,400. And then the other stuff that they brought in, what were some of the other things? Light source, better eliminate layer gaps with Z-axis, plus one or two microns. The high sensitivity LED screen force sensor, automatic build plate, which is kind of that, automatic resin refill, resin heating in the bat from the bottom. I think it comes from the bat. By heating the resin tray, resin temperatures can be increased from 50 to an optimal printing temperature of 73 or 22 degrees Celsius in just 20 minutes. And it's more consistent than having like a little heater thing that blows hot air in the enclosure of my Saturn III Ultra. So yeah, and the slicing program that they have, the intelligent exposure for exposing more UV light for the supports so that they're more rigid, and then they snap off cleaner than a standard resin printer. You can turn that feature on and off. I don't know why you'd want to turn it off. But yeah, peeling force management, so each layer, that's an insane amount of information that you're going to see on this machine that just looks and it's like, yeah, set it and forget it. It's kind of like Ronco. You know, you buy the machine, you put it in, you put the cartridge of resin in there, you slice the print, and boom, you're done. You know, however long it takes to print, it takes to print. But you don't have to deal with dialing in individual resins. And now the third-party resins come into play. Yeah, there's that. So I had to eat some crow on that. But now, I'm going to eat some Krispy Kreme. So, what am I going to do? If I didn't have the resin printer that I have now, I would buy this thing. Because I am, like I've told you before, I'm of the school of buy once, cry once. I have been involved in so many different hobbies. The last hobby I had was firearms, because I was a firearms instructor in the military. I did some really cool, I like blowing up stuff, shoot, move, communicate, did competition, stuff like that. And you enter into a hobby and you get the Barney basic version. And then you think, okay, well, I'm just going to get in because that's all the wife's going to let me spend. And then over time, it's like, well, I'm going to need to upgrade. You know, now I need the red dot sight, or I need this or that, or a competition trigger, or, you know, night sights and the whole 9 yards, the different holes. All of this stuff is an increase when, if at the very beginning you just bought something with all the bells and whistles, buy once, cry once, you would actually save money than buying an entry-level printer and then buying a mid-range printer and then maybe another printer and then maybe a high-end printer. It's what happens. And so with that in mind, that's why I've seen enough of that in the past. It's like, I'm just going to buy once, cry once. And at the time that I bought my Saturn III Ultra, that was the thing to buy. If only I had waited a little bit longer. But, you know, I'm going to use my Saturn III Ultra for what it is, and what we'll end up doing is in at least a couple more years. So we'll see what happens, but hopefully by that time, HeyGears will come out with a larger build area printer with the same technology, and of course over time their slicing program is only going to get better. But their slicing program is incredible because they did the medical and the dental resin printing before they even came into the hobby market. So they already have an awesome slicing program that does automatic supports. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. I would have to agree with Fohammer. I would have to agree with Greedy 3D that this right now would be the printer to get if you want all the bells and whistles. And it comes at a premium of $1,400. But the cool thing is that I could use my Elegoo, my Saturn Mercury wash station and cure station with this here, so I could save some money. I don't have to buy theirs because that's some money there. I wonder how much that is. Let's take a look at that. HeyGears, 3D printers, accessories. I think it comes down to accessories. There it is. So there's that. Their wash station is $360. Their UltraCraft cure is $750. Ouch. But it's heated and it's got big mirrors and it's supposed to do a better job. I just used my Elegoo Mercury bundle and I just bought some mirrors and put them on the inside. It works pretty damn good and it's cheap because I'm cheap. But yeah, that's what we got going on. So, am I going to say everybody needs to go out and buy the UltraCraft Reflex from HeyGears? No, I'm not going to say that. But it is an option, and depending on your budget and your needs and the conveniences that you want and the learning curve that you want to take on, or less of a learning curve, this might be the answer to the printer maybe you should get. So, yeah. Anyway, that's what we got going on. I thought that was really interesting. I had to eat some crow on saying that the HeyGears was way out there. It's up there in price. That's true. But the things it brings to the table is pretty impressive. Now, with that being said, what are we going to get next year with Elegoo or other resin printing companies where their new models come out and their last year's models go down in price? Yeah, you could probably buy 3 or 4 of those type of resin printers for the price of one HeyGears. But again, you got all that stuff that you got to deal with, the test pieces, the printing, the dialing in of resins of each and every resin that you use. If the HeyGears could come down in price to, I don't know, maybe if they came down to $1,000, that would, because it's $1,400. If you get it down to $1,100 or $1,000, yeah, I think that would be a huge tipping point for people to say, you know what, I am going to buy once, cry once. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. So anyway, what do you think? I mean, aside from saying it's not in my budget, I don't have the money, so I won't buy it. Obviously, there's people like that. But of all the conveniences that come with this machine, do you think that's going to help or hurt the 3D resin printing market? And if we see it with HeyGears, are we going to see it on other machines? And are we going to get some competition involved, which is going to push for high quality machines with the same technology, but bring the price down, which helps out you and me? I don't know. Are there some technologies that you would like to see in resin printing machine as a whole? I'm not talking about the HeyGears or Elegoo or anybody else. Photon 5 or Formlab 4, which is Formlab 4 by Formlabs, is a 3D resin printer. They have their own proprietary resin as well, but their printer is like $4,000, and their resin is insane expensive. Insanely expensive. That's what I wanted to say. But yeah, what do you think would be a good technology to have in a resin printer? And I don't know, maybe we'll see that in the next go round. It'll be interesting to see how HeyGears, because they were in the medical field and the dental field with resin printing prior to coming into the hobby or engineer prototyping market with this machine, are they going to release a new model next year? Are they going to release a model like every year, like every other resin printing company does? I don't think so. I think it'll be a couple of years before, they'll get into this, and then they'll make some more advancements. And I think maybe in 2, maybe 3 years, they'll come out with another machine once they get more of a foothold into the market and learning the lessons from what they did with this. They can get some lower production costs. Then they could price a unit a little bit less, making it more attractive for people like you and me. So, because that $1,400, that's a kicker. And when you look at the combo set, that's almost $2,400 right there for the wash station, the cure station, and the printer itself. Buy once, cry once. That's too rich for my blood. So I would have to bow out of that. So anyway, I'm just kind of rambling off now, and I have my donut to eat because, yeah. I finished eating crow. Oh, so good. So anyway, finished eating crow, so now I'm back to Krispy Kreme, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. With that said, Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel because I'm going to do more resin and hopefully FDM printing stuff. I'm waiting for Bamboo to come out with their large scale printer to compete with Prusa's XL printer, and maybe it'll be multi-head. It'll definitely be a larger build plate FDM printer, which is supposed to be coming out in third quarter this year, definitely fourth quarter, just in time for Christmas. Probably. I'm really looking forward to that because Creality and some other companies just put a bad taste in my mouth, and hence the reason for the Krispy Kreme. I don't want to get that taste again. So that's it. So everybody, I hope you have a good day. Today is Wednesday here in Korea. It's almost 7 o'clock at night, wherever you are in the United States or around the world. Good seeing you, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace. Man, yeah, Rich. That is